Hello, and this is the sixth Sunday in Ordinary Time, our last Sunday before the season of Lent begins, which begins on Ash Wednesday. And in fact, I'll tie a little bit of our Lenten preparation into this homily today. I want to start with a common misunderstanding or misapplied in terms of what do we do with all these Old Testament laws? Because often we describe them, Christians, Catholics today, describe them in terms of them being abolished. We don't follow them anymore. You know, we can eat pork now. We don't have to clean the vessels. We don't have to go through a purification ceremony before dinner. You know, maybe with the exception of washing our hands, but you know what I mean. There was a lot of ceremonial, a lot of living laws. Obviously, there's the moral law that's in there. But we often describe it in terms of it being abolished. We just don't follow them anymore. We got rid of them. And today's gospel, Jesus is telling us that this is contrary to what he's trying to say. Okay, so the opening line in today's gospel. Now, I'm going to read the shorter version today. I mean, the gospel today is almost 2 pages long. And I'm going to go with the shorter version, which omits this part. So if you're hearing the Sunday Mass, you know, you might not hear these words, but these words are in the longer form that Jesus says, "Amen, I say to you, I've come not to abolish the law, but to fulfill it." Okay, so what's the difference between abolished and fulfilled? Because, you know, like I just said, there seems to be a lot in the Old Testament in terms of the rules, the laws, that we just don't follow anymore. Okay, and so did we get rid of them? You know, what's going on here? And so to get to this, let's use an analogy to maybe help understand where Jesus is going with this. So right now I'm speaking to you, and I am looking at the text, the gospel text, and I can read the text. And I'm sure that most of our listeners, if not all of you, can speak pretty well and can read pretty well as well. You know, and I think many people that we encounter, same thing. Okay, but where did it all begin, right? Where did it all begin? Excuse me. It begins with the ABCs, right? The song that we sing. I'm not even going to try to sing it for you, but you know how it goes, like A, B, C, you know, those types of, that song. And then we got the flashcards, okay? What's this letter? Well, this is B. Well, what's the sound of B? You know, ba, you know. Here are the vowels, A, E, I, O, U. You know, this is how we began the process of speaking and writing, was by these simple learning of the letters, learning how they sound, the flashcards, and any other technique that preschoolers, kindergarten teachers, you know, whatever age it is that we are, you know, teaching kids to read and to write. But that whole process, that song, those flashcards, it's all temporary, okay? It's all temporary because it serves a greater purpose to put those sounds, to put those letters together so that we can give coherent sentences and express our thoughts and to read and to write. The whole process of the beginning, you know, of learning the ABCs and learning their sounds and learning how to write them, all that is temporary because it serves a greater purpose. You know, hopefully when we get to first and second and third grade, hopefully, ideally, the idea is, you know, at least in our American modern education system, the goal is that we're not singing the ABC songs anymore, that we're not doing the flashcards, you know, that they have served their purpose, okay? They have served their purpose. And now there's bigger and greater things to be had. All that which began with the learning, the reading, the sounds and writing of the letters, okay? And so that's how I want you to think of these Old Testament laws. They have been given to us, but they have been given to us for a temporary purpose. There is a greater goal that Jesus has given us in today's gospel, a greater focus and emphasis, leading us into a deeper direction. Okay? And what is that direction? Well, this is last week's gospel. The direction is to be the salt of the earth and to the light of the world. Remember, this passage is still within the confines of the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus is continuing his very lengthy homily, which began 2 weeks ago with the Beatitudes. Okay, and those who are accepted into the kingdom. And then gives us the address, looking at them, speaking to us. You are the salt, you are the light of the world. You see, these Old Testament laws, the purpose was for Israel to be a light to the nations, to be a people that stood out, to be a people where the other nations will look at them and say, look at the devotion to their one true God, okay? Expressed in how they eat, in what they do, in what they wear, and how they worship, okay? All this is centered, the outward expressions are centered on the fact that they are meant to attract and bring in the nations to the one true God. That was the purpose and function of this kingdom of Israel. This is who they were called to be, but they failed at that. Jesus is going to be the fulfillment of the purpose of being that light and salt of the nations. It begins with him. And now the law has served its purpose. We don't get rid of it. We complete it. We fulfill it. The outward expressions of the uniqueness and the dedication, devotion, that outward expression on how they live is now also draws into a deeper inward devotion and dedication to the one true God. Right? Jesus is taking the outward things and saying, okay, you have done the outward things well, right? You didn't murder your brother. You didn't commit adultery. You've been true to your oaths. But now let's go to the inner heart. Let's go to the fuels of those sins, okay? In murder, it's what? It's anger. In adultery, it's lust, okay? And things like, it talks about oaths and keeping truths of the oath. It's integrity, it's honesty. Those are where the healing, and this is where our salvation takes place, where these problems, these vices, these inner deadly sins of anger and lust and all the others, greed and pride, all these need to be cured and sanctified. And when the people see the heart change, and when people see a good and an inner heart within a person, there's where the true light and salt takes its fruit, its merit. You know, this is where they now become attractive, okay, to people and to the nations. So the law has served its purpose. The outward uniqueness of Israel is meant to bring us into a uniqueness and dedication to the one true living God. And so when we now enter into the season of Lent, I mean, there's a lot of outward expressions during Lent, right? It begins with the ashes put on our forehead. And we go to our place of work with the ashes on our forehead, or to the grocery market, right there's an outward sign, okay? People see and identify your dedication. But again, like salt from last week, salt can be both enhancing or it can be destructive. Okay, you can have that outward sign of the ashes on your forehead, but be rude to your waitress. And now that mark of Christ on you is now destructive. The salt that you're called to be is destroying the earth rather than enhancing people's lives. You know, we go, on a Friday during Lent, and it's our workplace, and we're not eating our ham sandwich. Why? Because we're not eating meat on Fridays during Lent, and people see that, and they're attracted. Okay, wow, look at this person's dedication, But then you're in the workplace, and as you're eating that tuna fish sandwich, now you're making, dirty jokes or so forth. Now it's destructive, right? Destructive. Okay. Or again, people, you have the outward signs and dedications and show whatever that looks like. But a lot of times people can see through that, right? They can see the heart. They can see what kind of person you really are. And these are the things, and again, I'm not saying this to condemn, I'm saying this to be aware and to heal. Like, this is where Jesus is getting at. This is where he's going, right? This is where he wants to save us. These are the things that are hindering to our life of faith and in growth. So the law in itself, with its many outward expressions, means nothing. Right? It means nothing if there's no inner conversion, right? And the law is meant to bring us to the inner self, to the inner healing. And same way in all of our Lenten devotions and practices, again, many of them are outward and observable, but all of it is meant to lead to an inner renewal conversion. Okay, so let's remember that, as we proceed to Ash Wednesday, a very solemn penitential season, and just know that really the great workings of God are within our human hearts. May God bless you.